Welcome. This video is going to be a little bit different than the past few I've made. The past few that I've made have all been about something technical in design and engineering. This video is going to be about how I actually started working in the industry and how I had as my first job outside of college designing spacecraft. So this may be interesting to a lot of people for various reasons, and I didn't get there in a typical fashion. So what happened? I graduated college in 2006, and I was looking at the job market. I had really good grades, which it turns out may be detrimental to some people getting hired. Good grades don't necessarily indicate that you are going to be a good employee and that you are going to be able to do things that are not book related, that are not homework related, that are not tests. And looking back, I can see how that could have been indicated by having good grades, especially having interviewed people now. It's a little bit different seeing that from that side. But the job market was what it was in 2006. It wasn't great. However, I did get a job offer after going on a few interviews. I think I shot myself in the foot with some interviews with just the wrong mindset and the wrong attitude going into job interviews. I screwed up a lot in the interviews. That's a completely different story. But my professor in one of my classes said, hey, how would you like to go to graduate school? We could do this program, and it's a program where you go straight to a PhD. You don't stop, you don't get a master's. You spend ideally 4 or 5 years after undergraduate just going straight to get a PhD. And although I was opposed to going to graduate school at first, I said, let me think about it, and I didn't really think about it that long. I went to grad school right away. I had a small stipend, school would pay some of my classes, and I had to work on a specific project for my professor. Well, the truth is I didn't do a good job of vetting my professor and realizing what the working situation with him would be like. I'm kind of a free-spirited, I am a free-spirited person. To the most part, I have goals of doing things a certain way. I don't like being demanded to do something unless I highly respect someone's opinion and they know what they're talking about. And I had conflicts with my professor due to his working style of dictating things when I knew there was a better way to do things, a quicker way to do things, what I thought was a smarter way to do things. And he just would not listen to me. I had to do it his way. And this is really frustrating. So over about a year and a half of this, I got tired. And I realized at some point I wanted to quit. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I started looking on jobs or looking for jobs any way I could. I believe I was using Monster at the time. It was a while back. I looked online. I really wanted to work in a private space industry though. So I was trying to find all the private space industry jobs that I possibly could find. You name the private space company that existed at the time, I applied there. I heard back from almost all of them. Almost all of them gave me some kind of response. Some I got interviews with, some I did not, but at least I heard from most of them. Funnily enough, the only one that didn't respond back to me directly was SpaceX. And I think that was because of how my resume was written, and it was just an awful resume, the way I wrote it. It was dumb. But I did apply to a lot of these private space industry jobs. That's what I really wanted. I thought, this is going to be my dream job, working on spacecraft of some sort, spaceships, whatever, rockets. I wanted to work on it. Airplanes even. Well, I finally found a weblog of a not really well known, but of a person that worked at a company that I thought was my dream company. I contacted him and I said, hey, how's it going? Blah, blah, asked him some questions and started a rapport with him. In the meantime, I had quit my job at work. It was the end of the year, so I got to go through the end of my classes and then drop out of school. and I believe it was January this time, 2008. Yeah, it was January 2008. And I finally said to this person I met on a weblog, hey, I quit my PhD. I wanted to know if you think this would affect my potential to work at your job or with this company that I really wanted to work for. This was my dream job. This is all I wanted. And he said, no, I don't think it was a problem. Set up your resume and send it to me and I'll make sure it goes in the right hands. So that's what I did. I got my resume squeaky clean, a lot better than my other resumes. Got it to him. In the meantime, I was driving myself crazy applying for all the jobs that I could because I no longer was in grad school. I had no work and I had nothing to do other than really just apply for jobs and hope that something became available. Well, I eventually was at home one evening and I got a phone call from an area code I didn't recognize, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to answer it. And this is back when it wasn't so quick to Google things and smartphones weren't really a thing. I answered the phone call. It was from my dream job. I immediately got nervous. So all these other interviews I had been on, I wasn't really that nervous. But as soon as I knew that this is my dream job calling and all my potential future was hinging on this phone call, I started freaking out. So I could tell my voice was getting more, heightened or just screechy, and I was kind of just, shaking myself a bit, calming myself down. I was really excited about this, obviously. And I think the interview was actually going pretty well in spite of that, until I was asked a technical question. And it was one of those tricky, you really have to think about it kind of questions and work it out to get the right answer. And I bombed the question. I got it wrong. Straight up, I couldn't think straight. I was so nervous. I could not get the right answer, right? Nothing. Got it completely wrong. And I could tell from the man's voice who was interviewing me that he was disappointed. And he said, well, okay, if we have some other people to interview, if we think we're going to hire you or we think we want to take you on for an interview, we'll give you a call in about 2 weeks. And I was okay, great, thank you. Hung up. Immediately after I got off the phone, I wrote down the problem and worked it out in less than 5 minutes. I had a note card. It was like a 3x5 note card. I just worked out the problem, wrote down the physics, figured out, got an answer. Called the guy back. I think it was like *69, or maybe it was caller ID or something like that. Called him back, left a voicemail, said, hey, I just had an interview with you. Here's my name. And I worked out the problem. I couldn't think straight. Sorry, I was nervous. But here's the right answer, and here's why. I explained how I worked it out, why it was right, and just explained that and hung up and thanked him. But I was really nervous. I wasn't sure of myself at all. I didn't even know if it was the right move giving him a call back. I felt crushed because I had no work at the time. I had just dropped out of my PhD program. I didn't know what was going to happen with my life. I had some savings. I could live off that for a short time, but that was it. I had no clue what was going to happen in the future. So I went out, I had a couple beers, and I went dancing, because dancing I'd been doing for 2 or 3 years at a time. And that was my main socialization thing that I would do, was go out dancing. And the floor was really nasty. It was this concrete floor that had pebbles in it, and I was wearing tennis shoes, which I don't know what you know about dancing, but tennis shoes do not let your foot rotate. So here I was, I had just gotten off the phone for a phone interview for my dream job. I thought I bombed it. I thought I had zero chance. I thought my future was really screwed now. I had no perspective on this. And I was out dancing. Well, I was turning this girl in a turn, and then I did a turn myself. So you just called it she goes, he goes. So you turn the girl and then you turn yourself around. Well, this was a really bad floor. My foot stuck in one place. The rest of my body rotated around my foot. I didn't know this at the time though. All I heard was a snap, a really loud snapping noise, kind of like you took a tree branch and just crunched it. And I still didn't know what it was. I hit the ground really hard, and it was the first time I'd ever fallen like that while I was dancing. And I tried to get up, and I didn't get up, and it was really weird. I had no clue what was going on. And just then I heard someone say, "Oh, look at his leg." And I was so out of it this time, I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who they were talking about. But it slowly started to dawn on me what was happening, because I don't have any pain right now. I don't have any sensation that anything is wrong. So I lift up my leg, and normally you stare down your shin and you see your toes coming up there. Well, I looked down my shin and I didn't see anything. I didn't see my foot like I normally did. And that's a really weird feeling. Turns out my foot was hanging off to the side. I had broken both tibia and fibula, just snapped right above my ankle. If you ever saw some of those basketball videos of those guys stepping just the wrong way when they're playing basketball, I think there were 2 recent occurrences of this within the past few years where the guy just steps backwards. It was just the right position of his foot, tib fib break, snaps just like that. That's exactly what happened to me. So I didn't see the point there of screaming or freaking out or crying. That's just not how I react to things like that. So I just laid down on the ground, propped my foot up in the air, and just tried to relieve the pain a little bit. And I talked to some people there that were at the dance and just tried to enjoy the time I had just laying there, because I wasn't in a lot of pain. I guess the adrenaline had kicked in, and waited for an ambulance to show up. They carted me off. I immediately started feeling pain in the ambulance. You go over those bumps, and my foot's just hanging on by soft tissue, so I felt every single little bump. Got to the hospital, had surgery. I think it was like the next day. My parents happened to be in town, which they had moved out of state a while ago, and they just happened to be in town. And so they drove up and actually met me at the hospital after my surgery, took me away. So this was 2 months of recovery. I was away from all my friends. I had my family to take care of me, but I couldn't put any weight on my leg. The whole time I was trying to keep myself busy. To be honest, I was playing a lot of video games. I was playing around with programming, and I was applying for more jobs and trying to get phone interviews. And this was a really depressing time. When you can't walk, when you can't get a lot of physical activity, you're separated from all of your friends, and you have no job, you have no clue what your future prospects are, you can get spiraled in this bad attitude really quickly. Well, I actually saw a posting for a company doing some spaceship design. And it seemed kind of weird to me, and I wasn't quite sure, but I applied for it. And, waited a while. Now, my dream job said they would call back in about 2 weeks. It was, going on a month and a half at this point. I was getting close to where my time being spent not being able to walk was going to be over soon, where I could actually start putting weight back on my leg. Those 2 weeks had gone, and I was not in the right state of mind. I was so depressed from breaking my leg, from bombing the job interview, from being separated from my friends, from just having the wrong mental attitude towards this, that I was afraid to call the company and say, hey, I was just checking to see how this is going, if it's going to be longer or if you've already hired someone for it. I could have done that, but I just didn't have the right attitude at the time. But I got a phone call from this other job. Phone call went great. I was not expecting it. They offered me a position to move across country. They weren't going to pay any relocation or anything, but I had a job in a state that I think I'd visited once, but I knew no one there. I said, fine, is going to be designing spacecraft. That's awesome. That's what I want to do. Good enough, right? And I told him, explained the situation with my leg being broken, and I want to be able to bear weight. He said, okay, don't worry about it. Just wait till you can stand on it and you can come work. So that time happened. Finally got my cast off, and I go to the doctor, of course, get my cast off. And I think I was planning the next day to drive to this other state to start work at my new job, knowing no one. That night, I got a phone call. It was from my dream job. They said, how would you like to come for a job interview in person? We'll fly you out here. We're interested in you. Guess what I told them? I told them, sorry, I had already accepted a position for another job. This is so alarming to me that I was in such a mind state that I had this dream job. I had waited after breaking my leg, moving to another state temporarily to recover with my parents, away from my friends. My dream job called me and asked me for an in-person interview, and I turned them down. So the next day, we drove out. My parents helped me and got set up in an apartment with a little bit of savings I had. Drove them to the airport, and I was alone in a town. I couldn't even walk normally yet. I could put weight on my leg, but I could not walk normally. So I was in this completely new big city, knew no one, and started my first job designing spacecraft. So there are more stories to tell about this job. That's going to be it for this video, but that is the gist of how I got out of graduate school, dropped out, broke my leg, got a job in the private space industry. And it was a very bizarre experience. It really changed, I think, my attitude a lot. It made me learn quite a bit. But yeah, that's it for now. If you have any questions, comments, anything that you would like to discuss, please leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time.